Just when you thought we were done with MyDates back in Chapter 9, we're going to come back and embellish that MyDate class a little bit using exceptions. And we're going to pick up where we left off. This is pretty much the same code that we left off in Chapter 9. The one thing I don't like about this code is that we resorted to using system.error.println. Whenever you, in your set methods, if you try to set the month of a particular MyDate to be 13, well, that's silly because there is no 13th month. We wrote an error, but there's a better way to approach this problem, and that's using exceptions. And so disregard all this other stuff. These are the 3 files that you would have seen in the project. I've been experimenting in my lectures here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take MyDate 2, copy it, and paste it as MyDate 3. Okay? And so MyDate 3 should pretty much be a copy of MyDate 2, so that we can just change MyDate 3, the MyDate 3 class. And in fact, the driver that we left off, we're going to play with MyDate 3s. Let me go ahead and change all the MyDate 2s to MyDate 3s. And we'll take a look at that. All right. MyDate 3. Now, what do we want to do? Well, first off, let's talk about exceptions a little bit. There are a whole bunch of exceptions built into the JDK. You try to locate an exception that sort of describes what the problem is that you're trying to handle. In this case, you know, there's something called an arithmetic exception. You can make the case that, you know, setting the month to be 13 is an arithmetic exception, but it really isn't, because arithmetic exceptions are something that you use when you do arithmetic errors. There's a divide by zero exception that doesn't apply. There's a index out of bounds exception that doesn't apply. There's a whole bunch of methods that just don't apply. I want to create my own exception. So and it's very simple to do. All you need to do is create a new class, and let's give it the name MyDate Exception. That's generally what you would do to create your class. The superclass is could be. Let's take a look. Let's see the superclass. Let's make it either Runtime Exception. Let's do that. Runtime Exception. The superclass is your parent class. I don't need any main class. Runtime Exception sounds good. This is basically what it does here. Runtime Exception. And generally when you create your own exceptions, you either extend Runtime Exception or Exception. One or the other. An exception is what's called a checked exception. That means that you either have to handle it or declare that it could possibly occur. A runtime exception is something that you're not forcing the user to try to. You're not forcing the user to check it or handle it in any way. I'm going to go this route right here, and I'm going to show you why an exception is a real pain to deal with. A runtime exception. So let's do this. Let's make a constructor. I think let's have Eclipse make a constructor. New source. Generate constructors using fields. Okay, generate. Come on, baby. Source. I guess we can do that. All right, let's just get rid of all these other ones. Boy, that seemed to be harder than just typing it out. Okay. What we're going to do is generate a constructor that takes in a string description. String description. This description basically describes what the problem is, and I'm going to take that description and send it off to the send it off to the parent so the parent can go ahead and store the description. That's basically this is the pattern that you're going to see in the source code for creating your own exceptions. Okay, you create a constructor. That constructor takes in a string. That string gets sent to the parent to be stored, and that's really it. That really is all you need to do to create your own constructors. I mean, your own exceptions. Now what's this error here? Quick fix. This is a nuisance error. Okay, let's just say I don't want to get into what that is right now. Just to avoid that. It's not really an error. It's a warning. Let's just let Eclipse generate the fix for this, and we'll just leave it at that. So that's it. We save it. Great. Now we're ready to use it. Let's go to MyDate 3. MyDate 3. What I'm going to do is say, okay, all right, if there's a problem, let's throw a new instance of MyDate Exception. And this is the error. I'm going to try to save what I can do. This is the error that I would have printed out, but that error message gets sent to the MyDate exception, and that MyDate exception is going to store it. So what we did here is we threw an exception. Okay, and whenever any object that you throw needs to be handled in one way or another. Either you catch the exception and process that exception yourself, or you pass on that exception to another level of method calls and have the higher level method calls handle it. We're going to take a look at both in a sec. Let's go ahead and just do a global. So let's do a edit. Basically, any instance of this needs to be changed to this, and then we're done. That's as simple as that. Edit. Find and replace. Well, that was a mistake. Let's go ahead and take this, cut it, paste it, and then what we're going to do is copy this, copy. All right, the keyboard's not reacting right here. There it is. So every instance of this gets changed to that, replace all, and that should just work. It should just work. Famous last words. And yeah, it looks like it's working. I got no more system.error. That's it. That's perfect. Now, what do I mean by handling this? Here's what you do. The driver is the one that's using this. Let me show you what happens right now. I'm not handling the exception. If I call this exception, if I call this constructor and I pass it the 17th month, let's see what it does. Run it. This is what you get. Look at this. I even got this error coming out of this. Error, bad month specified. MyDate exceptions being processed. All right, that's something that we created in line 5. That's line 5. Okay. Now, see, the problem is we did not handle this exception. What we did was we just let the code execute, and if something bad happens, that exception propagates up to the main method, and since we didn't handle it, if there's a problem, okay, this exception needs to be handled one way. So if this doesn't handle it, then this exception gets sent back to the JDK that by default does this. Here's how you handle it. Try and surround the code with a try block. Copy. No, it's copy. Exit out. Put that back. Okay. All right. So let's try this code and catch MyDate exception. EX. Okay. So what happens is if we get an exception, MyDate exception, let's see, what do we want to do with it? Well, there's not much we can do right now. Let's just print it out. System.out.println, we'll call this an error, and we're going to print that error out. EX. This, and let me just put a little my handling of exception. Just to prove that we're handling the exception. Let's run it. Oh, there it is. My handling the exception. We've handled it. Okay. So we're free to create create our own handling. We've handled the exception. The JDK didn't produce this. This is something that we produced. And you might be saying, well, okay, how does the system know what to do here? Well, when an exception gets thrown, it tries to get caught by a catch block that has the same class or a parent class. MyDate Exception handled that. We could have as many catch blocks as you want. The granddaddy of all exceptions is this guy here, Exception EX. And basically what I'm going to do is copy and paste this, and I'm just going to say that just to distinguish between this and this. Okay, and so the idea here is, hey, if I try to execute this code and something other than a MyDate exception occurred, then, well, something other than say there was an I/O exception, although that can't possibly be because we're not doing any real I/O. Let's pretend we were. If we had an I/O exception, well, an I/O exception doesn't match this catch block, but it does match this, because exception is the parent of all exceptions. So it's going to go ahead and take that. And let's see what it does. Let's see what it. Let's pretend that I don't have this MyDate. Let's say we have an arithmetic exception. Did I misspell it? Arithmetic. There it is. Okay, I misspelled arithmetic. I'm losing my mind. Okay, so this catch block. These catch blocks are designed to handle arithmetic exceptions and generic exceptions. So what does it do when it tries to encounter a MyDate exception? Let's run it. Okay. See, what it did was the system goes top to bottom here. It's a MyDate exception is not an arithmetic exception, so it doesn't get handled here. But it does get caught by the granddaddy of all exceptions, and this is where you see exception 2. And which begs the situation where, why is this wrong? If I move this catch exception right at the very beginning, you get an error. Can you anticipate why? You know why. Okay, this is bogus code here. If the catches get evaluated from top to bottom here, this granddaddy catches everything. This can never get caught. This can never get caught, so we're going to come over here and you can say unreachable catch block. Okay. So you put the more generic ones at the end, the more specific exceptions at the beginning, and I'm going to go back to a MyDate exception because a MyDate exceptions, and we go back to the proper use of that. Okay, so what do you think? Well, that's silly. I don't know what you're. I can't answer any questions in a video like this. Send me a video. Send me an email if there's a problem with understanding what we're doing here. Now, in this case, we are handling the exception ourselves. We didn't really have to. Notice that I didn't have to put any try-catch blocks to get this code running. We ran that before, and we just relied on the JDK to do its thing. Let's go back to MyDate exception and show you what happens if we created a MyDate exception that extends exception. Save it, and I think we're going to get a bunch of errors here. Yeah, we're going to get a bunch of errors. Let's see. That one small change. I don't have to add any other changes here. Let's come over here to MyDate 3, and this is saying unhandled exception. Okay, here's the deal. We're throwing this exception, but the compiler is saying, well, this is a checked exception, and either you handle it or you tell the system that you're going to pass it, you're going to declare that this exception can get thrown. So to avoid these errors, you're going to add a throws clause. Throws MyDate exception, and that error goes away. Now what you're going to need to do is propagate. You're going to have to put this throws clause in every one of those methods that throws this exception. See, you're telling the system, I'm not handling this exception, but it could possibly throw this exception, and then you're back in MyDate, the driver. Now the driver isn't going to get it. Okay, here, look what we have here. Unreachable code is never thrown. MyDate exception that gets, oh, because we have to fix all these other errors here. So this is going to be the problem. MyDate 3. You know what I'm going to do is, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead. See, this is the problem with checked exceptions. You're going to have to put in every piece of code, you're going to need to do this and do this. Okay? And look at what the set date. The set date's got a problem because set date uses these methods here. The set date says, okay, I ignored the errors here, but the system is saying, listen, I don't have a try-catch block for MyDate exception. Okay, what are you doing to me? You're not handling it. So here you're going to have to propagate that throws in there as well. It's just a nightmare. Okay, when you're dealing with exceptions, sometimes you need to handle the exceptions, but in this case, I really don't want to. And we can go ahead and fix this. Let's go back. Let's undo Control Z, all these. Let's go back to what we had. Okay, and okay, what we had here was a regular runtime exception, and we could avoid all those problems with exceptions and not have that problem. See, all the errors went away. So you have to be careful as what type of exception you're dealing with when you're dealing with exception handling. So I think we'll leave it at this. I think it highlights what you need to do with exception handling, and we're going to see you in the next video. All right, take care. Bye.